Okay, so we'll start with the introduction to cloud computing. So initially we'll have a basic understanding about what is cloud computing and the benefits of cloud computing and the challenges of on-premises. And then we'll move on to the further discussion about the cloud computing on Azure. So basically the cloud computing, what is basically a cloud computing is? Uh, Traditionally, we'll have our data centers in on-premises. So where we'll have our servers. It might be a physical server or virtual machines or whatever. So you may have all the servers in your data centers, and your end users may access the services which is available in your servers or the data center. And there might be some scenarios where your organization may have the data center in one location and the end users might be sitting in another location. Say example, the data center might be in Pune and the end users might be sitting in Hyderabad. And basically a VPN will be established between the Pune office, that is a Pune data center, and the Hyderabad office. And once the VPN has been established, so the end users can access the services which is available in the data center of Pune, as like accessing from the local data center. Similarly, they can also access the resources which is available on the remote data center. So this is traditionally what we have our on-premises infrastructure. And here in on-premises data center, where the organization need to buy the server, and they should find a place to keep all the servers, and they should have the network connected, and also they need to uh, first of all invest on the servers, and they'll have the support team to configure the server and manage the server and maintain the server, and everything the organization is going to take care of the operation of the data center. But here, when we speak about a cloud computing, the data center is not going to be owned by the company, and some other company who already has the data center, and they'll have all the services which is required for most of the business requirement. And they say that we have the data center, you use our data center, and you can pay for the usage alone. Again, the cloud data center cloud service provider, so who is going to own the data center, here we call him as a cloud service provider or CSP. The cloud service provider is going to own the data center, and the data center is going to be in some other location. And as a cloud customer, we are going to connect to the cloud service provider's data center, and we are going to use those resources. Obviously the connectivity is going to be through the internet. So through the internet, if you're accessing your resources as it is, maybe your data is not secure. So to securely access your resources, obviously, as like you uh, establish VPN connection between your Hyderabad office and your Pune data center. Similarly, you can establish VPN connection between your on-premises network to the cloud service providers network, so that securely you can access the resources which is configured or which is uh, available in your cloud data center. So technically, there is no difference between your on-premises infrastructure and the cloud infrastructure. So technically the same. Only the thing is the on-premises data center is owned by the same organization. And coming to the cloud computing, where the data center is not owned by the organization. So someone is going to own the data center. And as a cloud customer, you are going to create whatever the resource you want, and you're going to make use of the resources. And obviously, end of the day, you're going to pay for the usage. So this is basically the cloud computing is. So since the resources, the data center resources are available in the internet, and the resources are accessed over the public internet, so that's why it is called as the cloud computing. And the cloud computing has several advantages where uh, there is no initial investment, and you're going to pay only for the usage. and there is no data center running cost, there is no data center operation cost, there is no support team required to manage your data center or maintain your data center, and you need not to invest more uh, to increase the uptime of your servers, and you need not to bother about the physical security, and there are several other advantages in using the cloud infrastructure or getting into the cloud computing. And the other important challenge in your on-premises is the scalability. See, generally, we'll have uh, a capacity planning basically for uh, when you are configuring any services like a web service or an application or a email server. So whatever the server or a service you configure, so basically you'll have a capacity planning. So based on the application you are using and based on the number of user who is going to access the services, so based on that you'll have a capacity planning. And there are some scenarios where you might not be sure about the load. Say example, you're running an e-commerce website. So maybe you may have a regular pattern analysis. Say regular the user hit might be 10,000 hit. Uh, the concurrently 10,000 users might be using your e-commerce portal. Maybe there might be one particular day where something like a flash sale or some festival offer. So in that days, the number of user hitting your site may increase. Uh, Maybe you might predict that you might have some 5 times the regular load. So you may require 5 times resource obviously to serve that particular day. So for that particular day alone, if you want to have 5 times higher resource, if it is an on-premises infrastructure, it is going to be again a challenging task. But when it comes to the cloud infrastructure, so you can just provision the resources for that particular day alone. And once the flash sale is over or the festival sale is over, immediately you can remove the resources, so immediately the billing also stops. So basically the scalability is going to be a very big advantage in the cloud infrastructure, so which is very big challenge in your on-premises infrastructure. So that is the great thing when you are moving into the cloud computing. And also one more advantage is you're not going to have, there is no any upfront cost. So initially while you're starting your business or your project, so you need not to invest on the servers. So you're going to create the resources. For creating the resources you're not going to be charged, but after creating the resource, how long you're using the resource. Maybe I'm using the resource for 300 hours in a month. For the 300 hours of usage alone, I'm going to pay. I'm storing something around 10 terabytes of data. So I'm going to pay only for the 10 terabyte of data usage space. So that is a very big advantage. So where you can have the control of the bill. So you know end of the day, you know what is the amount of resource consumed, and you know what is the bill I'm going to be charged for the usage. So the cost is going to be under your control. And also in on-premises, one more very big challenge is the uh, backup archival data, archival retention period. So you might have some archival data, maybe your project related data or something complaints related data. There might be some complaints related data which has to be maintained for 5 years or 10 years. So keeping those huge volume of archival data, again it's going to cost you huge in on-premises infrastructure. But when you come into the cloud infrastructure, so this kind of archival data, the charges are going to be very much less comparing your on-premises infrastructure. And also understanding about the challenges of the on-premises, so where we discussed enough about this. So if you are running your on-premises infrastructure, so you need to have a huge investment for the servers, storage, network devices, firewall, and all the things. And also you need to have enough space. Obviously, say example, you're using something around 1,000 square feet for your data center. For 1,000 square feet, you're going to pay the rental charges. So that is again a huge cost. And cooling system, the data center has to be maintained in 18 degrees Celsius. So for maintaining your data center in 18 degrees Celsius, so huge amount of cooling system is required. And the power consumption of your servers and the cooling system, and you should maintain the dust-free environment for your data center. And uptime, that is again a very big challenge. So maintaining your servers for maximum available time, so that is going to be another big challenge. And scalability, just a while before we are speaking about the scalability, is a very big challenge. And the reliability, anytime the server may go down or a service may go down. So even though if the server goes down or your network switch goes down, still the end users should be able to access the services. So the kind of high availability in on-premises, we need to invest high. Maybe always we have the solutions, but with high cost. But when it comes to the cloud infrastructure, so where a certain level of high availability is ensured as the standard service, and the certain level of high availability you can avail it with the additional charges. So that is a great thing. And the physical security, you since you're not maintaining the data center, someone else is owning and maintaining the data center, so you need not to bother about the physical security. And also the support and maintenance, again the data center is not going to be owned by you, someone else is going to own. So they are going to take care of the support and maintenance. And coming to the disaster recovery, so even on premises, if your entire data center goes down, you might have the DCDR solutions. But the DCDR solution is again, it's a huge cost involved. But when it comes to the cloud infrastructure, so the DCDR can be achieved with even with the low cost. So these are all the challenges of your on-premises. And now we'll understand about the characteristics of the cloud computing. So basically, the cloud computing, as we discussed earlier, it's not going to be owned by you. It is going to be owned by someone else. That is a cloud service provider. So you're just going to create the resource. First of all, you're going to get connected through the public internet, and using which you can access the portal. Basically, the cloud service provider, the public cloud service providers will have their portal where you can log into, and you can create your account, and you can create your resources, and you can make use of the resources. So that is the great thing. And self-service. So in case of on-premises, if you want a new server, basically you need to depend on the hardware vendor. So, but in case of cloud infrastructure, if you want a new server, you need not to depend on anyone else. You can just log on to the service providers portal, and you can create the virtual machine, and you can start using it. So that is the self-service. And the other important thing is the uh, virtual infrastructure. Basically, the cloud service provider is going to have their physical servers, and on top of the physical server, they'll have implemented the virtualization. So basically, the hypervisor, and on top of the hypervisor, we can create the resources. So basically, through the cloud service providers portal, you can create a virtual machine. In backend, what's happening is a virtual machine is created through the orchestrator, and the virtual machine is going to be available for us. So since all the resources that is provided to the cloud customer is going to be the virtual resources. So basically speaking about a virtual resource, obviously it is a software based resource. So the software based resources are basically easy to manage, and the deployment is going to be faster. And that's how the uh, cloud computing works. And also uh, you might create a virtual machine. The virtual machine is going to be created on top of a physical server, and another customer is also creating a virtual machine, and the other customer's virtual machine also may be parked in the same server or the host in which you have created your virtual machine. So basically the cloud resources are multi-tenancy based resources, so that the resources are shared between multiple customers. So that's how the cloud infrastructure is going to work. And also the scalability, while before we were speaking about the scalability. So whenever you need more resource, you can add the resource, and whenever you don't need the resource, you can remove the resource. So based on that, the billing also is getting optimized. But in case if you're not sure about the load, or uh, based on the load, uh, adding the resource or removing the resource should work automatically. So where you can also configure auto scaling. So basically the auto scaling itself will uh, act based on the resource requirement. So where when there is a more resource requirement, so it can automatically add the virtual machines. And when the user load goes down, it can automatically remove the virtual machines. So that is basically the auto scaling is. And the reliability and availability, basically the cloud infrastructure, the service provider will have all their physical servers clustered in the hypervisor level. And that is what I said, a certain level of high availability is ensured by the service provider itself as a standard service. Maybe beyond that, if there is any additional high availability requirement is from your side, so the service provider has the options to serve you that based on the configurations, based on the level of high availability uh, you configure. So that level of high availability can be ensured by the service provider. Okay, so up to whatever we have discussed, if you have any questions or any doubts, please let me know. I'm waiting for your response. Okay, so I consider there is no questions, so there is no doubts. We'll move on further with understanding about the types of cloud computing. So basically, based on the uh, um, customer's requirement, or the based on the business requirement, you can have different models of cloud infrastructure. And the cloud service provider also, there are different type of cloud service providers. So based on our requirement, uh, we can choose what kind of cloud infrastructure we need. So based on that, we can choose. Basically there are three different way of cloud deployments. So that is the public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud. So initially speaking about a public cloud, so since the name itself says it is public, so it which means that it is available for any public. So the cloud service provider will have a cloud portal, so where any individual or any business organization can log into, and they can create their account, and then they can create whatever the resources they need, and they can make use of those resources, and based on the usage they are going to be charged, and the bill is going to be paid by the customer. So basically this is the public cloud, so where it is available for any general public. So anyone who is using the internet can create, and they can use the resources. So that is basically the public cloud. So the example of public cloud is Azure and AWS, Google Cloud Platform. So these are all the examples of public cloud. And also we have a private cloud. So basically the private cloud is going to be owned by one particular organization, and these resources are going to be used by their own organization's employee, and the resources are not going to be published in the public internet. So only the resources are going to be created or used by their own organization's employees. uh, Say example, I have a company named Tata Group. So Tata Group, they are in different business. They are in uh, aviation business, and they are in services business, and they are in automobile business. So they are in different business. Obviously, they have different entities. So for serving these entities alone, Tata Group may have their own data center, and that is not going to be publicly published. And this particular data center is going to be used only by their group of companies. So that is basically the private cloud is. And we have the hybrid cloud also. There are organizations still running their on-premises data center along with the cloud. Uh, Generally, the traditionally all the organization use the on-premises data center. But this on-premises data center, say example, if the organization decided to move into the cloud, so they want to move all their servers into the cloud. But this cannot be done over the night, or this cannot be done uh, within a week or a month, which is going to require more time, and the resources cannot be moved immediately altogether. So you can migrate your on-premises data center to the cloud step by step or one by one. So in that case, say example, I have around 100 servers in my on-premises data center. In first phase, I want to move only my backups. So after moving the backup to the cloud, so few of the servers are available in on-premises and my backup alone is available in the cloud. So where both the cloud backup as well as the on-premises servers are going to be used together. So which is the hybrid cloud. So hybrid cloud is using the on-premises infrastructure or private cloud along with the public cloud, or using on-premises infrastructure along with the public cloud, or on-premises infrastructure along with the private cloud. Or there might be companies where already they might have the private cloud using their private cloud, and now they want to move into the public cloud, so using on-premise, sorry, private cloud as, and similarly they are using the public cloud also. So that is again called as the hybrid cloud. So hybrid cloud is basically combination of two or more cloud deployment models. So that is the hybrid cloud. And uh, this kind of hybrid cloud may include multiple service providers also. There are companies where they may use some of the services from Azure, they may use some of the services from AWS, and some of the services from Google. So put together, they because for certain service, AWS might be the top layer. For another service, Azure may be a top layer. So if the organization want to use best of all the services, so they can choose the respective service providers. So where they can have multiple service providers uh, used for their business. So again, that is basically a hybrid cloud. If there is any more questions about the cloud deployment models or the type of cloud, please let me know.
Hi, this is Chandru.
Yes, Mr. Chandru.
Okay, so for hybrid cloud, so if the client using data center, I mean on-prem data center and any one of the cloud, this is called hybrid cloud, right?
Exactly, correct.
So if in case the customer using private cloud and the separate public cloud, so it is considered as hybrid mode or?
Yes, see, because the services from the private cloud and the public cloud are going to be used by the same employees, right?
Yes.
So that is again it's again a hybrid cloud.
Okay.
Got it?
Yes, got it. Yes.
Okay. Any more questions?
Okay. Yes, sir. Bharat here.
Yes.
One doubt, like which are all the service we can differentiate, like for which are all the public and private? You told like Azure and AWS, right? So they are providing whether only that private service or including
no,
public.
Azure, AWS, Google. So these are all the public clouds.
Okay.
So these are all the public cloud service providers.
Okay.
And
so even they are
private cloud is basically specific to the organization. Okay, so even say example, I'm starting my new business. For my business, I want around 1,000 servers, and for these 1,000 servers, I don't want to own my own data center. I can give this to some other service provider. Maybe I can go with a local vendor, or I can go with Azure or AWS also. So the Azure or AWS or the private any other apart from, because these two names are well known names. There are hundreds of cloud service providers where you don't we don't know their names. So you can get the service from them. So what they will do is they will have a dedicated data center for our business alone. So there won't be any connectivity between our data center, that is the private data center, as well as the cloud data center. So our private data center is going to be isolated from their public data center. So where this private data center resources can be accessed only by my organization. Okay, so
Okay, so
yeah,
yeah,
please continue.
got it. Sorry to interrupt. So as per my understanding, like Azure and AWS and Google, they are providing public cloud service.
Yes,
So based on our requirement, they are providing private cloud as well.
correct.
Okay. Yeah, fine.
Okay,
This is my
so apart from that, even the company, my say example, I'm saying that I want my for running my business, I want 1,000 servers. So for running this 1,000 servers alone, I can start another company for this cloud service alone. That is a private cloud service alone. So both the companies are owned by me. One company is for my production business. Another company is to serve the IT resources. That's it.
okay.
Got it?
Got it, sir.
Okay. Any more questions from others?
So private clouds,
Hmm.
they are providing separate data center.
Yes, exactly.
It means the scalability concept is not under this requirement, right?
No, if see the private cloud also where you can have the scalability
Mhm.
again based on your requirement. So the service provider will have all the required configurations done and all the required resources they will have to ensure you get the scalability and all the other high availability features. So based on the feature required, obviously the charges are going to vary.
Okay. But they are providing the private cloud particular region only, or we can get across any other regions also
Okay,
as a cloud.
so coming to the different location or different region in the
Mhm.
private cloud, definitely there will be limitations. Say example, I'm choosing a local service provider for a private cloud. So might be this particular service provider might not be uh, good enough to have their data center in Europe location or in Australia location or in US location. So in that cases, definitely this service provider will not be able to provide resources in the US region or in Europe region. So where the company has to suffer it. Okay, so that's what you'll have a limitation in the private cloud. So if you don't want those kind of limitation, obviously you can go with the public cloud. Okay, so the only thing, great thing about the private cloud is it is dedicated for you alone. Okay, but if you're expecting the near features of the public cloud, obviously you need to go with the public cloud. So you cannot expect all the features which is available in the public cloud in private cloud. Got it? Was your question answered? If you still have any questions, please let me know.
Okay.
Again, private cloud, it is based on the service provider whom you are choosing. So if you're choosing a big player like AWS or Azure, so maybe they might be able to serve you private data center or private cloud in multiple regions. But it is not the same case with all the private cloud service providers.
Okay, so based on our requirement, they are partitioning our requirement and they are providing the resource based on our.
See, initially they will say that for private cloud, so these are all the services we offer.
Okay.
And if your requirement is within this, no issues. But if you have more requirement, again, the company will consider if many customers are expecting this kind of features. So in that case, they may think about. But I don't think the additional features, most of the private cloud service providers, they will not be in the position to serve you immediately. Because it's again involving the cost, right?
Yes, correct. So
they will give the commitment based on the possibility. They will say that, okay, if you are requiring this particular features, okay, so this will be the additional charges, and if both the company accepts, so they can offer the same. Okay.
Got it. And for example, if the company required 1,000 servers, I'm just highlighting the example. So it may, if they are having more than that in particular data center, so they are strictly to utilize the entire resources. They are charging like that, or if it is, we can pay only for based on our requirement.
No, basically the private service providers will have the resources again based on the requirement of the customer only. Okay, so they might have around 10 to 20% of the spare resource, not more than that. So if the customer requires more resources, so obviously they will the customer has to wait for a period of time so that the cloud service provider can additionally add the additional resources. Okay. So nearly you'll also have the challenges, whatever you face in your on-premises infrastructure, a similar kind of challenges you may face, but not up to that extreme, but limited. That's it.
Okay. So the bare metal layer will taking care by cloud.
Okay, that is again based on the type of cloud services. That's what we are going to discuss after this discussion. So basically we have our software as a service, infrastructure as a service, or a platform as a service. So based on the type of service you choose, so based on that, the level of control will vary.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sir, Kumar.
Yep. Yes, please.
Sir, private cloud service, they will keep the self-service portal or?
Yeah, they will offer you self-service portal.
Okay.
Okay. Again, depends on the player you're choosing, but most of the players will give you the self-service portal.
Okay, sir.
So basically, the cloud service provider will have the orchestrating infrastructure. So where based on the user inputs, so the orchestrator will be able to deploy the required resources.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir. Bharat here. I have one
Yes,
question.
Mr. Bharat. Yes, Mr. Bharat.
So what is the major service that you can say between private and private that can sorry,
See,
public that can provide
the major services are
and private that can't provide?
okay. See, basically the scalability service. So that is a one important thing where the public cloud provider will have too many resources to serve too many customer where they will have more spare resources. But when it comes to the private cloud, so they will not have too many resources. If in case of say example, if there is a flash sale on that day, I am going to require 5 times higher resources. So where the private cloud service provider will not have a 5 times higher spare resource. So that is a very big challenge for the private service provider. So where you might not you cannot expect that from the private service providers.
Fine, sir. Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions?
This is Rajguru.
Yes, please.
Yeah, actually, considering the high availability and DR purpose, so which service providers, like public or private, which service provider will provide the reliability and scalability in this perspective? Can you tell me about this?
Again, the reliability and scalability, public service providers can offer you better solutions. Why? Because the public cloud service provider, basically their customer market is too high, and also they will have more enough resources, and also their high availability solutions are comparatively high than the private service providers.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, thank you.
And not only the scalability and availability, and also the security also. So the public cloud service providers can offer you better security than private. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So which means like high availability and the DR purpose, like we have to choose public, I mean, infrastructures.
Correct.
Comparatively to this.
Correct.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. So if there is no more question, we can move on further, discussing about the types of cloud services. So basically, there are hundreds of services out there that is being offered by the cloud service provider. And out of those services, there are these four are the topmost services used by the most of the clients. That is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, serverless computing as a service, and software as a service. So again, based on the requirement or based on their need, the customer can choose what type of services they want. So initially speaking about infrastructure as a service, basically in infrastructure as a service, where the a cloud service provider will have less control and the cloud customer will have more control on the resources. So basically the cloud service provider will have their physical hardware. On top of that, they'll have the hypervisor, and up to the hypervisor level, the cloud service provider will have the control. And on top of that, creating the virtual machine, creating the storage, or managing the operating system, and patching the operating system, and all this is going to be decided, and that is going to be managed by the cloud customer itself. So where the cloud service provider will have the less responsibility, and the cloud customer, they need to set up the virtual network, and they need to decide what operating system the virtual machine should have, and what should be the configuration of the virtual machine, what should be the CPU, RAM, and so on, and what level of security they require, and what is the level of storage they require. Everything has to be decided and configured and managed by the customer itself. So that is basically the infrastructure as a service. So wherever you have the requirement to uh, uh, maintain the resources from the scratch, or if you want to have more control on your resources, so in that case you can go with the infrastructure as a service. So this infrastructure as a service is nearly the you can compare with your on-premises infrastructure. So in on-premises infrastructure, you decide what how big your network should be, what IP range you want to use inside your network, and how the security should be, and patch management, everything you're managing in your on premises. Similarly in infrastructure, so you are also going to do everything. So where you're required to create the virtual network, and you need to choose what IP range you are going to use, and you need to decide what traffic should be allowed inside your network and what traffic should be allowed outside the network, and everything, patch management, and everything is going to be managed by the cloud customer itself. So that is basically the infrastructure as a service. And coming to the platform as a service, and in this case, where the organization already have an application, say example, they have a CRM application. For running this CRM application, they need an Apache server, but they don't want to have the headache of configuring the network, and they don't want to have the headache of managing the patches, and they don't want to have the headache of maintaining the uptime of the Apache service. So in that case, they are just owning the application, and they need a platform to run their application. It might be a Windows platform or a Linux platform, whatever. So they need a platform to run their application. So that is basically the platform as a service. So where the application is going to be owned by the customer, and the rest of the resources is going to be owned and managed and maintained by the service provider itself. So that is basically the platform as a service. So where as a cloud customer, I'll just give the requirement for running my application. What is the amount of storage required? What is the amount of CPU memory required? And what is the operating system platform required? And what is the middleware required? All these requirement will be given by the service, the customer, and based on the requirement, the service provider will ensure all these things are available. And where the cloud customer is going to just deploy their application, and he's going to configure his application, and they are going to make use of the application. So the cloud customer is going to have control only on the application and the rest of the things. So the underlying infrastructure, that is the operating system, patch management of the operating system, availability of the physical server, and availability of the hypervisor, availability of the network, everything is going to be managed and taken care by the cloud service provider. So this is basically the platform as a service. So basically this kind of platform as a service, you can use it for your test environment or development environment, or in the production environment also. So where the cloud customer don't want to have too much of control on the resources. So in that case, they can go with the platform as a service. And when you go with a platform as a service, where you, again, as I said earlier, you need to decide what is the amount of CPU required, memory required, or the storage required. So all the resources are going to be allocated to the particular application uh, by the service provider. And it is not that whatever the resources you have allocated for your application, it is not that all the resources are going to be 100% consumed. Say example, for running my application, I opted for 16 GB of memory. It is not that 16 GB memory is going to be consumed efficiently. Maybe if 50% of the users are working, so maybe something around 6 GB to 8 GB of RAM is consumed. The remaining resources are not consumed. But still, I'm going to pay for 16 GB of RAM. But you decide that I don't want to go with that. I just want to pay for the usage alone. I don't want to pay for the capacity whichever I have opted for. I want to pay only for the usage. In that case, you can go with the serverless computing. Serverless computing is also nearly similar to the platform as a service. So based on your requirement, you can go with platform as a service, or serverless computing as a service. So where the cloud customer is going to have control only on their application and the data, not on the remaining of the resources. But here, the resource allocation is not going to be static. The resource allocation is going to be dynamic. So based on the usage, based on the number of user using the application or the service, based on that, the resource allocation is going to happen, and the cloud customer is going to pay only for the usage alone, not for the resource allocated. Because in platform as a service, the resource is allocated, and whether you're using the resource or not, you're going to pay for it. But in serverless computing, based on the resource usage or the resource consumption, you're going to be paying for that. So that is basically the serverless computing as a service. And most of the like the e-commerce companies or media streaming companies will prefer serverless computing. And also we have a software as a service. So basically in software as a service, where the cloud customer is not going to own anything, he will not have control on any of the application or OS or in the hypervisor. So everything is going to be maintained and managed by the service provider itself. As a cloud customer, we are going to subscribe the usage license for that particular software, and we are going to use the software. So where the everything is going to be managed and maintained by the service provider itself. So where all the responsibilities are with the service provider, and as a cloud customer, I'm just going to use the software and I'm going to pay for the usage alone. So that is basically about the software as a service. So I can give you a better example. For my business, I want a CRM application. For this CRM application, I can go with infrastructure as a service or platform as a service or even software as a service. So if I want to go with infrastructure as a service, where I'll be creating the virtual network, I'll be creating the virtual machine, and I'll be responsible for installing the service like IaaS or Apache, and I'll be responsible for installing the patches, and I'll be responsible for configuring my application, and I should own the license, and everything is going to be managed by me. Otherwise, for the same CRM application, I can go with the platform as a service. So where most of the responsibility with the service provider, and I can just configure my application alone. I can start using it. Or for the same CRM application, I can choose any service provider who offers the similar kind of services, CRM services, like Salesforce or some other company. I can subscribe their resources, that is their license, and I can start using them. So again, based on the customer's requirement, you can choose whatever you want. Is that clear up to this? If you have any more questions, please let me know. Okay, so I believe you got a better understanding about the cloud computing and the type of cloud services offered and the types of cloud deployment models and the benefits of the cloud. And the remaining topics will be discussing in the next class, that is by tomorrow. And thank you all for joining the session today. And we'll discuss the remaining topics tomorrow. And thank you all. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, sir.